Ever get this, like, eerie feeling
Hmm.
that we're just scratching the surface of history?
I know what you mean.
Like, we celebrate the invention of the wheel,
Yeah,
but humans were around for ages before that. What were they up to all that time?
right. It's like this huge blank space in the story.
Exactly. And what amazing things are we missing from those early chapters?
Well, that's the beauty of deep history, It makes you question everything you thought you knew about time and progress.
So not just assuming it's a straight line from point A to B.
Yeah, like what if it's more of a spiral? Civilizations rising and falling, leaving just these faint whispers behind.
Okay, now you got me really intrigued. Our source describes this as reality A versus reality B. So reality A, that's like
Hmm.
the whole shebang, right? The epic saga, every event, every detail, even if we've lost most of it forever.
Exactly. Kind of makes you feel small, doesn't it?
Totally.
Like imagine trying to understand the entire universe, but we can only see a tiny fraction of the light it emits.
Oh, I like that.
We have reality B, the evidence we can study. It's like finding a chipped teacup and trying to imagine the entire civilization it came from.
Hold on, that's a perfect analogy.
Hmm.
We might be missing huge chunks of history. Just like we can't see certain wavelengths of light. It's like we're trying to solve this massive jigsaw puzzle,
Hmm.
but we only have a handful of pieces.
And that's assuming those pieces are even from the same puzzle.
Whoa. Okay, mind blown.
See, the source material makes this fascinating point. Just because, say, humans hadn't invented the wheel by a certain point, doesn't mean they lacked intelligence.
It's not like they were just sitting around
Yeah.
waiting for someone to invent the wheel, right?
Right. They might have had completely different priorities, different ways of understanding their world.
It's not necessarily about a lack of progress, but maybe a different kind of progress.
You're getting it.
Like, I read that ancient Indians had incredible memory skills,
Right.
right? Memorizing entire texts, mastering multiple languages, skills that people now, even with all our technology, we struggle with that.
Exactly. We get so hung up on technology, judging past societies solely on that. But what about their social structures,
Mm.
knowledge systems, spiritual practices,
Right.
all signs of how advanced they were, just in different ways? The source really argues for a more holistic view, one that recognizes diverse forms of intelligence and achievement.
So broadening our definition of what it means to be advanced,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Not just tools and tech, but the full scope of human ingenuity.
Precisely. And here's where it gets even more mind-bending. What if this rise and fall of civilizations, this constant cycle of innovation and decline,
Yeah.
what if it's happened multiple times?
I'm going to have to explain that one.
Okay, so imagine societies reaching these incredible heights, then fading away, leaving behind only the faintest of traces.
And then new civilizations pop up, maybe building on top of those lost ones without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Wow. That's both awe-inspiring and a little terrifying if you think about it too hard. Like,
Yeah.
what if we're building on foundations we don't even know exist? Remnants of some lost civilization we can barely comprehend.
It's like the Earth is whispering secrets and we're just starting to overhear them.
Okay, so we're dealing with limited evidence, potential cycles of lost civilizations. It's a lot to process. Are there any, like, specific examples from history? Things that illustrate this idea? Give us a glimpse into this reality A.
Absolutely. The source specifically mentions Murti Puja. It's the practice of idol worship in Hinduism.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Now, this wasn't something that just appeared overnight, right?
Right.
It likely evolved over time, with earlier forms of veneration existing long before the elaborate rituals and traditions we see today.
So even ancient traditions have their own hidden histories,
Yeah.
their own roots that might stretch back to those lost chapters of human experience.
Think of it like layers upon layers of belief and practice, each building on the last.
Oh, wow. I like that. Each one leaving its mark.
Exactly. And while those earliest layers may be lost to time, we can still see their echoes, their subtle influences in the practices that have survived.
It's like studying a contemporary painting and realizing it contains elements, brushstrokes, maybe even hidden figures from previous works of art,
Yeah.
like echoing through the ages.
You've got it.
So how do we even begin to uncover those hidden layers, those whispers from the past? Where do we even start?
Well, it's like the source says, it all comes back to memory and how cultures pass things down through generations.
So we're not just talking about dusty artifacts here,
No, not at all.
but actual living traditions, passed down and evolving over generations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that game, what's it called? Telephone. But on a global historical scale.
Haha, yeah, I like that.
But if those early migrations were so influential, what happened next? How did we get to this point with so much diversity where those connections are harder to see?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, the source brings up these two Sanskrit terms, vamsana and avadvansana.
okay.
Devamsana, that's the natural tendency for things to break down, like entropy.
So, like, everything falls apart eventually.
Yeah, exactly. It's like imagine you leave a bike out in the rain, it starts to rust, things fall apart.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So Devon-sana is that force of chaos, that inevitable decay that gets to, well, everything. Man, that's kind of bleak.
It's true, though. But there's a counterforce, right? That's the avansana.
Okay, so what's that then? The Avad-vansana.
That's preservation, like
Yeah.
that conscious effort to maintain order, to hold things together.
So instead of leaving that bike out in the rain,
You bring it inside, maybe oil the chain, store it properly so it doesn't rust.
you actively fight back against that decay.
Yes. Civilizations, they do the same thing. They're always striving to preserve knowledge, traditions, their sense of identity, even.
So it's this constant push and pull, this battle between decay and preservation. And wait, the source suggests that civilizations can actually lose that battle, not just from outside forces, but from within.
Yeah, they can. Remember those early migrants we were talking about? The ones carrying all those beliefs and practices? Well, the source, it proposes that as they moved further away, geographically and even culturally, they started to lose touch with the core of those traditions. They forgot things, reinterpreted things, adapted. And eventually, something totally new emerged.
It's like that whisper from the past, becoming fainter and fainter, harder to make out until, it's almost drowned out by new voices, new interpretations.
Exactly. But then again, those changes, they probably led to incredible innovations too, right? All that mixing and evolving created the diversity we see today.
That's a good point. It's definitely complicated, isn't it?
It really is. And the source uses some, well, let's just say strong language. Like it talks about descendants straying into darkness, but we have to remember that this is just one perspective. It's one way to look at a very complicated and nuanced history.
Right. It's always good to stay critical, to consider different viewpoints, different interpretations, and to avoid easy answers, especially with something like as massive as deep history.
Couldn't agree more. But even with all those caveats, there's something powerful about this whole idea. Civilizations being fragile, always pushing back against that decay.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes you think about our own civilization, doesn't it?
it really does.
Are we holding things together, or are the cracks starting to show?
Man, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's exactly why understanding deep history is so crucial. It's not just about memorizing names and dates from some textbook. It's about understanding those larger cycles at play, those forces that shape societies over generations.
Yeah, and the source argues that even just looking for that knowledge, wrestling with these big questions,
Right.
it has value in and of itself.
There's that theme of active engagement again. It's not enough to just inherit knowledge. We have to really wrestle with it, make it our own. Are there any examples from history of that active seeking, the avadvansana playing out?
Sure, take the out of India theory, for example.
Okay, I think I've heard of that.
It suggests that those early humans migrating out of India, they weren't just carrying, practical skills and stuff.
They were bringing more than just tools and like farming techniques.
Way more. We're talking about sophisticated belief systems, languages, maybe even early forms of art and storytelling, all of that.
Wow. So as they spread across the globe, these things evolved, right? They interacted with other cultures, but they left their mark in these subtle ways.
It's true.
Hold on. Are we saying that there could be connections between ancient Indian culture and other civilizations, like all over the world?
The source seems to think so.
I'm picturing these cultural ripples spreading out across time and continents. That's incredible. What kind of evidence is there to back this up?
Well, for one, there are these linguistic connections.
Like between different languages?
Yeah, between Sanskrit at the ancient language of India and then languages spoken all across Europe and Asia. It's really pretty fascinating when you start to see the similarities.
So there are actual links. It's not just a coincidence.
The source definitely doesn't think so, no.
Huh. Okay, what else?
And then there are like these cultural parallels. You see these myths, these symbols, even deities that are they're too similar to be a coincidence, even in cultures that are like oceans apart.
So it's like these ancient stories, these myths. They were like seeds carried by those early migrants. They took root in new lands, were nurtured by different cultures, and blossomed into these new forms. But still, they hold these echoes of their origin.
It's really something, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you think about how these like really ancient beliefs, those first attempts to explain the
Yeah,
universe.
to find our place in all of it.
Exactly. That they're still with us today
Mm.
in a way just transformed.
It speaks to how powerful they were, right? Those early stories.
Yeah. But it wasn't always a smooth or peaceful kind of transmission, though, right?
That's true. Sadly, no. The source reminds us that these encounters, a lot of times, they involved conflict, conquest,
Mm.
even,
Uh,
the suppression of people's existing beliefs.
it's kind of a darker side to it all, isn't it?
Yeah, sadly it is. A reminder that the tapestry of human history, as beautiful as it is, it's also got these darker threads woven through it.
Man, it's just so complex, isn't it? Trying to trace those threads back to understand the influences, the power dynamics, all those forgotten stories. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we almost need a time machine.
Haha, wouldn't that be nice?
Seriously. But even without a time machine, it feels like engaging with deep history like this, trying to untangle these mysteries. It changes how you see the world, doesn't it?
It does. The source, it really emphasizes that it's that seeking that's valuable, you know? It's like this precious gem. Its value is like amplified by the effort we put into uncovering it, into understanding its facets, into appreciating its rarity.
So it's not just about the facts then. It's the journey, the questions we ask, how we challenge our own ways of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It's about expanding our perspective. It's about understanding, really understanding the vastness of time.
And that we are just one small chapter in this huge
Sure.
ongoing story.
Yes, a
Or-
story that started long before any of us got here, and that'll keep going long after we're gone.
Wow. Okay, that's a powerful thought to end on. As we wrap up our deep dive here, is there any final thought,
Mhm.
a question? What should our listeners be thinking about after they finish listening to all this?
If there's one thing I hope people take away from all this, it's a sense of humility.
Humility.
Yeah, humility in the face of, well, everything we've been talking about, the vastness of time, the complexity of history, and just acknowledging the limits of our own understanding. We may never know all the answers,
Yeah.
but it's the act of asking those questions, of seeking out those lost connections. That's what matters. That's where the real reward is.
It's a good reminder that we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves. And even if we only get these little glimpses of it, those glimpses, they have the power to change us. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.